says she's glad to see the American soldiers. She wants to see even more Americans coming. The Haitian government simply doesn't have the resources, she says, to rebuild her shattered city. Jason Beaubien, NPR News, Port-au-Prince.
We go now to Jacmel. It's a city about 20 miles south of the capital. Before the earthquake, it was a jewel on Haiti's southern coast. It had colorful French colonial architecture, and tourists flocked to its quiet beaches. Today, a lot of Jacmel is in ruins. It wasn't until Friday, 3 days after the earthquake, that emergency help finally arrived in Jacmel. NPR's Greg Allen is there. And Greg, why did it take 3 days for help to begin arriving in Jacmel?
Well, Madeline, what I've seen is before this and other disasters like Katrina, you always think aid should arrive immediately, but it just logistically it takes some time to get it off the ground. And here in Jacmel, people the day after the earthquake on Thursday were saying, where is the aid? It did start arriving on Friday, and by now the U.S. AID has got a steady shipments coming in here. The airport is now open to relief flights 24 hours a day. There are aid groups here providing food, water, and other support. And you have the Canadian Navy is here with a ship offshore. They just arrived last night, and they've started deploying troops around town who are basically just cleaning up the streets, making the streets passable to travel.
And Greg, you came from Port-au-Prince, where we've seen images of terrible destruction and disaster. How do you compare it to Jacmel?
Well, I came to Jacmel prepared for a city in ruins, and there certainly are ruins here. The old part of the city is demolished. But in terms of the devastation we saw, it's nothing compared to what we saw in Port-au-Prince, where neighborhood after neighborhood, you have dead bodies still trapped in rubble, you have bodies on the street, you have mass graves. There's nothing like that here. Most of the dead, I'm told, have already been pulled from the rubble. There is a school that they believe might have as many as a couple of hundred students in it still. They've not been able to get in there and get the bodies. So the death toll is, right now they're saying in the hundreds, and the streets don't look anywhere near as bad as they are in Port-au-Prince. Also, the encampments are much smaller and much more livable than the ones we're seeing spring up in Port-au-Prince.
And what has happened to these famous buildings, this beautiful colonial architecture?
Well, Jacmel is a city that's built on the south coast of Haiti, right on the sea, and just up from the water you have the old part of the city. It's built on sand, they say. The upper part of the city is built on rock. And that other upper part of the city, most of the residential areas, they came through it much better. The old part of the city, buildings are very old, from the mid-19th century, and many of them just totally collapsed. In almost every case, there was severe damage. You've got iron balustrades falling off the building, whole walls have collapsed, and whole streets are just filled with rubble. And it'll take basically not work to get this place back on its feet again.
And you said earlier that there was a Canadian ship docked offshore providing aid. Why has Jacmel become the focus of Canadian aid?
There are historic ties between Canada and Jacmel. Apparently some Canadian
their schools, their superintendents are telling them this might be the only money we get for a number of years. Let's go for it. But we shouldn't have pursuit of money be our blind stampede to something that doesn't really help students.
Besides, says Dewar, teachers in Minnesota had little or no input, so his union decided not to endorse their state's application. Teachers and local school officials in California, Kansas, Florida, Michigan, and Indiana also withheld their support. Another dozen states, including Texas, didn't even apply, either because the money came with more federal oversight or because some states simply weren't sold on the reforms the Obama administration is pushing.
Frankly, I could care less if it's a tough sale or not. It's the right thing to do.
U.S. Education Secretary Arnie Duncan.
All this money is obviously voluntary. If states don't want to apply, don't want to compete, they have every right not to do that. But I will tell you that when we put literally billions of dollars on the table, that you'll see people more than step up.
Here's what Duncan wants states to do with the money. They must shut down failing schools and lots more private.
¿Con quién?